So when I first came to the States, they were calling me Katia. My teacher was calling for me, Katia. And I'm looking at her, she's looking at me, and she's like, Katia, Katia. And I'm like, that's how I learned my first name, which is Katia.
Gotcha.
So I never knew this entire time.
Wow.
Yeah, so growing up, that's one difference, I guess I would say, in terms of the culture.
Yeah.
So growing up here, it was difficult at first. I would say, like, I learned how to speak English through ESOL. Like, I did all of that.
Wait, through like your entire like school?
Elementary years.
Okay.
Elementary years, I started off, I was taking English classes. I was taking Creole classes.
There you
and
go.
I'm like, why am I here? I already know what they're saying. Sure. So I grew up, I was born in Haiti, so I'm a Haitian American.
Okay.
Came here when I was very young, didn't speak any English.
Okay.
The interesting thing is my name is Katia. You know me as Katia, but
Right.
when I was little, I would go by my middle name,
Which is?
Fabienne. So
Fabienne, okay.
that's how my family,
That's what they call you?
That's what they would call me.
Okay.
So when I first came to the States, they were calling me Katia. My teacher was calling for me, Katia. And I'm looking at her, she's looking at me, and she's like, Katia, Katia. And I'm like, that's how I learned my first name, which is Katia.
Gotcha.
So I never knew this entire time.
Wow.
Yeah, so growing up, that's one difference, I guess I would say, in terms of the culture.
Yeah.
So growing up here, it was difficult at first. I would say, like, I learned how to speak English through ESOL. Like, I did all of that.
Wait, through like your entire like school?
Elementary years.
Okay.
Elementary years, I started off, I was taking English classes. I was taking Creole classes.
There you
And
go.
I'm like, why am I here? I already know what they're saying. I already know what they're saying. But it was a great experience. I grew up in South Florida, so
Okay.
Miami.
Which there's a pretty good population down there.
Yes, there is.
For those that don't know.
Yeah, so it's I loved growing up, in South Florida. I felt at home. Every other corner, it was like, another restaurant. The Caribbean life over there, of course, I love that. It's like a big melting pot.
Yeah.
So growing up there, that was my younger years.
Yeah.
At home, I have 3 brothers, so I was the only girl.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm sure that had its own challenges.
That has you have the right response. A lot of people are like, "Oh, well, you must have been spoiled." I was like, "No, I really wasn't."
Yeah. I mean, I know that that's a different experience. Like, I have one older sister. I know how hard it was just for us to get along, let alone if there was 3 versus 1.
Yeah.
It'd be challenging.
But if I knew what I know now, I probably would have been spoiled. I would have been like, "Come on, I'm your only sister." Like, make different requests.
Yeah.
But it was okay. I like growing up with my brothers.
Where are you in the order?
I'm 3rd.
Okay. Oh, so you're from the bottom.
Yeah, 3rd. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no. I have one younger brother. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was good growing up with them. I grew up in a traditional home, so we were raised Catholic. My mom, my dad, they're still together.
How long have they been together?
Like 40 something years, 45.
Ooh, wow.
It's been a while.
That's rare.
Yeah.
Some of these days now.
Yeah, and they're still together. They live not too far from me. And growing up, I had a couple of cousins in the area in South Florida as well.
Yeah.
But I spent pretty much my entire childhood there. I went to middle school there, high school there, and college as well. So South Florida, I went to Florida International.
Down in Miami.
Yes, and that's where I got my bachelor's in sociology and anthropology.
Okay.
So initially, I wanted to be a professor of sociology.
To go teach people?
Yeah, and then my professor was like, the majority of my money comes from writing books, and back then I didn't like to write. I was like, oh no, compared to now, I love it, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, it kind of like threw me off, and I didn't want to continue pursuing that degree.
Yeah.
But growing up in South Florida, I really enjoyed it. It was a great experience for me.
I'm curious, because you did have that traditional upbringing. I think that that's good, because a lot of what I usually talk about is how a lot of us are coming from single parent households, you know, or co-parenting type relationships and situations. I'm curious, because you had both of them there in the house and you had those older brothers, how did you guys kind of navigate the relationships between your parents? Because obviously there's, what, 4 of you? So how did that go in terms of splitting time between mom and dad and then each of you?
It was pretty much, when we were in Haiti, my mom was working. Like, she had a really good job over there. And our grandparents lived like right there next to us, not too far away. We could walk.
Okay.
And, you know, my aunts and uncles, everybody lived nearby. When we came here, there was a shift. So my dad came here first and to America and started working. Then my mom came over as well, along with us.
Okay.
Since she came here, she had a job. Like, she's, you know, she worked with DCF in the past.
Okay.
But I would say the breadwinner would be my dad. Back then, and it was more like, you know, mom, she took care of the house, she made sure, you know, we ate, we had everything set, like the house looked beautiful and everything, kept things in order. And, you know, her words as well, she provided us some words of wisdom, and my dad did as well, but he did a lot of working. He was usually working a lot of times.
Okay.
He's still working.
Oh, even to this day?
Yes.
How was it where, okay, so I can imagine, so you being the only girl there, like, do you feel like you had any particular closer relationship with your mom? Like, did she go through and kind of give you a lot of that womanly wisdom that probably dad can't necessarily offer to you?
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of like, not really. No? My mom now, I feel like she gives me more, like, information, and she's open with me, and she talks to me about stuff. We didn't really talk about, like, a lot of things, like life, that, you know, maybe it's because I didn't ask questions either. I was quiet, you know, she wasn't saying much.
Okay. I mean, it happens. The reason why I asked is because, and I don't know, like, for those out here that are listening, but in my experience, like, a lot of parents don't necessarily make the space for kids to talk about it. So then there's, like, all these mistakes that we end up making that we probably didn't have to go through, but nobody ever tells us about them. Yeah. So when you made that point, I was thinking in my mind, okay, there's 4 of you, so there's going to obviously be time constraints, right? How much you can actively invest in each child. Not because you don't want to, but just because there's 4 of you and 2 of them. But the fact that your mom was there, I'm thinking, okay, maybe because you're the only daughter, maybe there's discussions around courtship, around dating, about, you know, how you grow, how you evolve as a woman compared to your brothers. So you're saying, like, you guys didn't really talk about any of that?
No, it's an interesting thing. I would say I wish we did, being where I am now. Yeah. And now she speaks to me about it, and I can go to her about things that I'm experiencing and for advice. We do it now, but back then, I guess the what I would want her to speak to me about was, okay, hey, you're in college now. You know, maybe you should start looking around. Maybe you should, you know, hey, you're getting your degree. You're almost done. Why don't you start kind of like, you know, keep an eye out for someone who may be a potential spouse. That would have been so great. Yes, I agree. But we didn't really, like, talk about that, you know. And I would say, I have to say, I was very reserved as well. And it goes back to how I was brought up. Like, a lot of things, like, I wasn't able to do, you know, or I didn't feel comfortable doing, because I knew they would be, you know, more like, hey, where are you going? Like, for example, sleepovers. Oh, yeah. I can imagine. I didn't go to any sleepovers. I can imagine. Listen, sleepovers for what? You have a bed and you have a house here. Exactly. Where are you going somewhere else? Yeah, so certain things I didn't get to fully experience, so I didn't put myself out there like that. And I think, like, they really wanted us to focus on education. Hey, make sure you go, you get your education. And I feel like back then, like in the 90s, that would be like something to definitely take us to the next level, especially with us being not even first generation. My kids would be first generation, but you know, just coming in. So a lot of times it's like they push on education. So my focus was like, hey, make sure you're a good person, you're a good student, you know, keep yourself, like, don't go doing anything with, you know, these boys out there. No risky stuff. Yeah, so it was a lot of that growing up. And, you know, like, so I feel like in a way it kind of like stopped me from opening up completely. You know, I wasn't like, hey, I got a crush on Damien today. Like, there was none of that. None of that. And I couldn't do it with my brothers, you know? So it was like kind of just holding everything in.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
I feel like there's a good point to be made there, because for those of us that come from like different cultural backgrounds, it's a very different experience. I feel like we have. There's different expectations that get put on you that like when you're born here, you have a completely different sort of expectation of like how you can carry yourself. And now, full disclosure, I'm first generation on like half side of my family. The other half, they were born here. So I somewhat can understand, not fully your lived experience, but from my understanding, it's that when you come from other countries, there's usually inherently more pressure to perform, because you know, like you left home and whatever you might have been dealing with there, to try to obviously create a better life, maybe better legacy for the family, and so on. I don't know if that was the same for you, but that's been my experience when you talk to most people who families don't originate in America.
You have a lot of opportunities that you know wasn't presented to you back then, so it's like, make the most of it.
Absolutely. But then when you have your next generation, the kids that grow up here, some people call it entitlement, but I think there is a certain entitlement to freedom to express yourself, to explore what you're into, that maybe your parents didn't necessarily have, because they felt like kind of the old adage of put your head down and just kind of get to work, right? We need to provide a foundation and a stability so that future generations can be better off. They can have that type of flexibility.
Yes.
Do you think that was somewhat similar for you?
Yes, and I think, I'll be honest, it was some of me being reserved, not sharing things, not feeling comfortable to share things with them.
Sure.
Would they have received it well? I don't know. Maybe not.
I mean, we never know, right?
You know,
they're
like,
old school. We never know.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but I didn't put myself out there. I did not, you know, just volunteer information about how my life is going,